This is the sentence most people instinctively reject. Not because it is false, but because it dismantles a belief system they have spent their entire lives protecting. From childhood, you were taught a simple equation: work hard, become skilled, be disciplined, and eventually, you will be rewarded. It is a clean narrative. It is also dangerously incomplete, because if effort alone created wealth, the hardest working people on earth would be the richest. They are not. Look around with unfiltered eyes. The people who exhaust themselves physically, laborers, service workers, operators, are often the ones struggling the most. Meanwhile, there are individuals who appear to exert less visible effort, yet command disproportionate income. This is not an accident. It is not injustice. It is structure. Hard work does not guarantee proximity to money. And without proximity, effort dissipates. This is the first illusion that must be destroyed. Working hard is not the same as being close to money. You can work 12 hours a day and still be positioned miles away from where financial decisions are made. You can execute tasks flawlessly and still remain invisible to the mechanisms that generate wealth. Effort, when applied in the wrong location, does not compound, it evaporates. The second illusion is even more subtle. Being highly skilled does not guarantee high income. Skill is only valuable when it is placed in an environment where it can influence outcomes that matter. A brilliant engineer buried in a low-leverage organization will earn less than an average strategist sitting next to capital allocators. A talented designer working in obscurity will struggle, while a less talented one with access to distribution will dominate. The market does not reward skill in isolation. It rewards skill in proximity to power. This is where the discomfort intensifies, because once you accept this, you can no longer blame your results on a lack of ability. You are forced to confront a colder reality. You may be competent, disciplined, even exceptional, and still losing, simply because of where you are standing. Income does not rise in direct proportion to how capable you are. It rises in proportion to how close you are to the sources of power that control money. And most people are standing very far away. They are positioned at the edges of systems, executing, reacting, following instructions, while the real decisions happen elsewhere. They are downstream, where value arrives diluted, delayed, and diminished. They are paid last, not because they are least important, but because they are least positioned. This is the truth that reshapes everything. Your financial life is not a reflection of your effort. It is a reflection of your distance. Distance from capital, distance from decision makers, distance from information, distance from leverage. And until that distance changes, nothing else will. Core principle. Money is not randomly distributed. Money does not scatter itself across society like dust. It does not drift toward those who deserve it. It does not respond to intention, morality, or even consistency. Money moves with precision. It follows structure. It concentrates. If you observe closely, you will notice that money gathers around three gravitational centers: power, decision, information. These are the axes of economic reality. Power determines who has control over outcomes. Decision determines how resources are allocated. Information determines who sees opportunity first. Where these three converge, money accumulates. And where they are absent, money thins out. Most people live in environments that are disconnected from these centers. They operate in roles where decisions are made above them. Information reaches them late, and power is something they must obey rather than wield. In these positions, no matter how hard they work, they are structurally limited. They are not participating in the creation of outcomes. They are participating in the execution of someone else's decisions. And that distinction changes everything. Because those who are far from power experience the economy differently. They receive what remains after value has already been captured. They compete for leftovers. They negotiate within constraints they did not design. Their income is capped not by their potential, but by their position. They see opportunities last. They access capital last. They are paid last. Meanwhile, Those who are positioned close to power operate under a different reality entirely. They see shifts before they become trends. They influence decisions instead of reacting to them. They allocate resources instead of requesting them. And most importantly, they capture value at its source before it is diluted across layers of the system. This is why two individuals with similar intelligence, similar effort, and similar backgrounds can end up with radically different financial outcomes. The difference is not internal, it is positional. One stands near the flow, the other stands far from it. And proximity changes everything. Because when you are close to power, you do not chase money, you intercept it. Opportunities reach you earlier. Information arrives faster. Decisions involve you directly. You are no longer waiting for permission. You are part of the mechanism that grants it. This leads to the simplest, most unforgiving formula in modern economics. Income is proportional to proximity to power, not effort, not intention, not even talent. Proximity. The closer you are to the points where money is created, controlled, and distributed, the more effortlessly it flows toward you. The further you are, the more you must struggle for fragments. This is not a motivational statement. It is a structural law, and once you see it, you cannot unsee it. The lens of Niccolò Machiavelli. Centuries before modern markets, before corporations, before digital economies, Niccolò Machiavelli understood a principle that most people still resist today. Power does not belong to individuals, it belongs to positions. A man is not powerful because of who he is powerful because of where he stands. In every system, political, economic, or social, there exists an invisible architecture. At the center lies the core, the place where decisions are made, resources are controlled, and influence radiates outward. At the edges lies the periphery, where execution happens, where orders are followed, where outcomes are felt but not shaped. Most people live at the edge. At the edge, you work more. At the edge, you know less. At the edge, you react. You are given tasks, not authority. You are given instructions, not context. You are given outcomes, not influence. Your world is defined by what others have already decided. But at the core, the dynamics invert. At the center, individuals often do less visible work, yet exert greater impact. A single decision made at the core can redirect the efforts of thousands at the edge. A single allocation of capital can create or destroy entire markets. A single shift in strategy can redefine the future. This is not because those at the center are inherently superior. It is because they are positioned where leverage exists. They do not need to act more. They need only decide. Machiavelli observed this in courts and kingdoms, but the structure remains identical today. Replace kings with executives, ministers with managers, and armies with organizations. The geometry of power does not change. The closer you are to the center, the more your actions are amplified. The further you are, the more your actions are absorbed. This is why a highly skilled individual at the edge can struggle for recognition, while an average individual at the center can command authority. It is not fairness. It is positioning. Proximity to power transforms effort into influence. Distance from power reduces effort into noise. And this is the final realization that most people avoid. You do not need to become dramatically more capable to change your financial trajectory. You need to move closer to the center, because when you do, everything you already are, your skills, your thinking, your decisions, begins to multiply in effect. Closer to power, your voice carries further. Closer to power, your decisions carry weight. Closer to power, your income expands, not because you changed who you are, but because you changed where you stand. And in a world governed by structure, that is the only change that truly matters. The access map, where power actually resides. There is a moment, if you look closely enough at the world, when everything begins to reorganize itself in your mind. What once seemed chaotic starts to reveal a pattern. Success is no longer mysterious. Wealth is no longer random, and people who once appeared lucky begin to look precisely positioned. Because power is not hidden, it is simply concentrated. And once you understand where it concentrates, you stop asking, "How do I make more money?" You start asking, "Where is money already flowing? And how close am I to it?" This is the access map, not a motivational concept, a structural reality. Every system, economic, corporate, digital, organizes itself around layers of proximity. At the outer edges, there are countless individuals competing for limited rewards. At the inner layers, there are fewer individuals, but exponentially greater access to value. The difference between these layers is not effort, it is position. And position is defined by proximity. Proximity to capital, proximity to decision-making, proximity to information, proximity to distribution, proximity to high-level thinking. Each of these layers acts as a multiplier. The closer you move toward them, the more your actions begin to carry weight. The further you remain, the more your actions dissolve into the background. Most people never consciously map these layers. They drift into roles, industries, and environments based on comfort, familiarity, or opportunity as it appears to them. They do not evaluate where they stand in relation to power. They do not measure their distance, and so they remain where they started, far from the flow. They may improve, they may grow, they may work harder, but they do so within the same coordinates, and coordinates determine outcomes. Because the system does not reward motion alone. It rewards movement toward the center. The access map is not about becoming someone else. It is about relocating yourself within the structure of the system. It is about stepping out of positions where your effort is diluted and moving into positions where your presence is amplified. Once you see this clearly, your strategy changes. You stop asking what to do. You start asking where to stand. Because, in a system governed by proximity, location is leverage. The brutal difference: there is a line, thin, almost invisible, that separates two types of lives. On one side, there are those who spend their time executing. They follow instructions, complete tasks, and operate within boundaries set by others. Their days are full, their effort is real, and their output is measurable. Yet despite all this movement, their position remains unchanged. On the other side, there are those who shape direction. They decide what gets done, how it gets done, and who does it. Their actions may appear minimal, but their impact is disproportionate. A single decision they make can influence outcomes far beyond their immediate reach. The difference between these two groups is not intelligence. It is not discipline. It is not even ambition. It is proximity. Those far from power live in a reactive state. They receive instructions after decisions have already been made. They see outcomes after they have already unfolded. They operate within systems they did not design, following rules they did not create. They are participants. Their income reflects this position. It is controlled, limited, and dependent. They are compensated for execution, not influence. And because execution is replaceable, their value is constantly under pressure. They compete horizontally with others at the same level, fighting for incremental gains in environments that offer little room for expansion. They work harder. They improve incrementally. But they remain within the same constraints. Those close to power experience a different reality. They operate upstream. They are involved before decisions are finalized, before resources are allocated, before direction is set. They see possibilities earlier. They influence outcomes before they materialize. They are not reacting. They are shaping. Their income reflects this position. It is flexible, scalable, and often detached from direct effort. They are compensated for judgment, for positioning, for influence. And influence is difficult to replace. Because the closer you are to the center, the more your role becomes unique, not because of who you are, but because of where you stand. This is why two individuals can start from similar points and diverge so dramatically over time. One remains at the edge, optimizing effort within constraints. The other moves toward the center, increasing leverage with each step. Over time, the gap widens, not gradually, but exponentially, because systems amplify position, and the system is not designed to equalize outcomes. It is designed to concentrate them. This is the brutal difference most people avoid confronting. They prefer to believe that success is a matter of fairness, that effort will eventually be recognized, that merit will rise on its own. But merit without proximity is silent, and the system does not listen to silence. Why most people never move closer? If the structure is this clear, if the map exists, if the difference is this stark, then the obvious question emerges. Why do most people remain where they are? Why do they continue to operate at the edges, far from power, far from money, even when the path toward proximity is visible? The answer is not a lack of intelligence. It is resistance. Not external resistance, but internal. Because moving closer to power requires more than strategy. It requires breaking patterns that feel safe, familiar, and deeply embedded. The first force is comfort. Comfort is not neutral. It is gravitational. It pulls you toward environments where expectations are clear, risks are minimized, and outcomes are predictable. These environments feel stable, but they are also limiting. They are designed to maintain equilibrium, not to create expansion. Power does not reside in comfortable environments. It resides in competitive, uncertain, high-stakes environments where decisions carry weight. And most people, consciously or not, avoid those environments. They choose ease over exposure, stability over access, and in doing so, they remain distant. The second force is fear. Not abstract fear, but specific, social fear. The fear of approaching those who operate at higher levels. The fear of being ignored, dismissed, or rejected. The fear of not belonging in rooms where power is concentrated. So instead of moving toward those centers, people retreat into familiar circles. They stay among peers. They remain in environments where they are understood, where expectations are manageable, where their identity is secure. But security comes at a cost, because proximity requires discomfort. It requires stepping into spaces where you are not yet established, where you must prove value, where rejection is a possibility. Most people avoid this, and avoidance preserves distance. The third force is identity. Over time, individuals build narratives about who they are. They attach themselves to roles, industries, and environments. These identities provide stability, but they also create rigidity. I am this kind of person. I belong in this field. This is what I do. These statements feel harmless, but they become constraints. Because when opportunities arise outside these identities, opportunities that may offer greater proximity to power, they are often rejected, not because they are unviable, but because they conflict with the existing self-image. And so people remain where they are, not because they cannot move, but because moving would require redefining who they believe themselves to be. They remain loyal to the familiar, even when the familiar no longer serves them. Comfort, fear, and identity. These are the three forces that anchor people at the edges, not chains imposed by the system, but boundaries maintained by the individual. And as long as these forces remain unchallenged, proximity remains unchanged. And as long as proximity remains unchanged, outcomes remain predictable. Because in the end, the system does not ask how hard you tried. It asks only one question: how close were you willing to get? The strategy, how to move closer to power. 4 steps. Understanding the structure is only the beginning. Seeing the map changes your awareness, but it does not change your position. And position is everything. Power is not granted. It is approached, not through hope, not through effort alone, but through deliberate repositioning. This is where most people fail. They wait for opportunities to come to them, believing that competence will eventually be noticed. But power does not scan the edges looking for talent. It operates inward, reinforcing itself. expanding around those already within its reach. If you want access, you do not wait. You move. And movement must be strategic. 1. Reposition yourself. Change the environment before you change yourself. The first step is not self-improvement. It is relocation. Because you can spend years refining your abilities in the wrong environment and see little to no financial change. Not because you are ineffective, but because the system you are inside cannot reward you proportionally. Environment sets the ceiling. A small market produces small outcomes. A low-leverage role produces limited growth. A constrained system caps even the most capable individuals. So the first move is simple, but uncomfortable. Move from small to large, from low to high, from limited to expansive. This does not necessarily mean quitting everything overnight. It means gradually shifting your position toward environments where money flows in larger volumes. Decisions carry greater weight. Opportunities scale. This could mean entering a different industry, joining a higher growth company, or positioning yourself within ecosystems that operate at a larger scale. The key principle is this: your growth is capped by the environment you tolerate. If you remain in spaces where value is limited, your output will always be compressed. But the moment you step into environments where value is abundant, your potential expands, not because you changed, but because the context did. Most people try to grow within the same environment. Few change the environment itself. And that is why most remain where they are attached to power. Get close before you rise. Once you reposition into a stronger environment, the next step is proximity. Not theoretical proximity, physical, functional, undeniable proximity. You must place yourself near those who control resources, make decisions, and shape outcomes. This is where ego becomes a liability, because many people believe they must enter powerful environments with status, authority, or recognition. They wait until they feel ready, until they believe they deserve to be there. But power does not require your perfection. It requires your presence. You do not need to be important. You need to be close. Working near founders, executives, investors. These are not just titles. They are nodes of influence. Being in their orbit changes what you see, what you learn, and what becomes available to you. Even at a low position, proximity rewires your trajectory. You observe how decisions are made. You understand what actually matters. You gain access to conversations others never hear. And over time, this exposure compounds. Because access creates familiarity. Familiarity creates trust. Trust creates opportunity. Most people try to climb from afar, but distance weakens influence. The fastest way upward is inward, not by force, but by positioning. 3. Increase visibility. Be seen by the right eyes. Proximity alone is not enough. If you remain invisible, you can stand next to power and still be overlooked. You can operate within high-level environments and still be ignored if your presence does not register. Visibility is not about attention from everyone. It is about recognition from the right people. This is where many misunderstand the concept. They associate visibility with popularity, with mass attention, with superficial exposure. But real visibility is targeted. It is being known for value in environments where value matters. You must make your thinking, your work, and your contributions visible, not randomly, but strategically. This can take many forms. Sharing insights that demonstrate understanding. Producing content that reflects high-level thinking. Contributing in ways that are observable and impactful. The goal is simple. Make it impossible to be ignored by those who matter. Because power does not reward hidden competence. It responds to visible value. If no one sees your thinking, it does not exist in the system. If no one recognizes your contribution, it cannot be leveraged. Visibility converts ability into opportunity. And in proximity to power, Even small signals of value can create disproportionate results. C. Become useful at a higher level. Shift from execution to influence. The final step is transformation. You cannot remain at the level of execution and expect to capture value from positions of power. Execution is necessary, but it is not where leverage resides. To move closer to power, you must become useful at a higher level, not by doing more tasks, but by contributing to outcomes that matter. This means shifting your focus from completing work to shaping decisions, from following instructions to influencing direction, from producing output to driving results. At higher levels, value is measured differently. It is not about how much you do. It is about what changes because of what you do. Can you help make better decisions? Can you improve strategy? Can you influence revenue, efficiency, or growth? These are the questions that define value near power, because those at the center do not need more execution. They need clarity, insight, and leverage. If you can provide that, even in small ways, you become difficult to replace. And once you are difficult to replace, your position strengthens. This is where income begins to detach from effort. Not because you stopped working, but because your work moved closer to influence. The brutal principle. At this point, the illusion should be gone. You are not paid based on how hard you try. You are not paid based on how much you sacrifice. You are not even paid based on how capable you are. You are paid based on one thing: how close you are to power. Everything else is secondary. Effort matters, but only when applied in the right position. Skill matters, but only when visible to the right people. Discipline matters, but only when directed toward the right environments. Without proximity, these qualities weaken. With proximity, they multiply. This is why two people with similar abilities can earn vastly different incomes. One operates at the edge, far from decisions, far from capital, far from distribution. Their effort is real, but their position limits their return. The other operates closer to the center. Their effort may be similar, or even less, but their position amplifies their impact, and the system responds accordingly. This is not unfair. It is structural. The system rewards proximity because proximity creates leverage, and leverage creates outcomes. Once you accept this, you stop negotiating with reality. You stop asking for fairness. You stop waiting for recognition. You stop believing that more effort will solve structural problems. Instead, you adjust your position, because position is the only variable that changes everything. You do not need to become dramatically better. You need to become strategically closer, closer to capital, closer to decisions, closer to information, closer to distribution, closer to thinking that expands your range. This is the shift. Most people ask the wrong question. How can I make more money? It sounds logical. It feels productive. But it keeps them focused on effort, on doing more, pushing harder, optimizing within the same constraints. The better question is colder, more precise, more dangerous. How can I stand closer to the people who control money? Because once you change your position, the answers begin to change on their own. Opportunities appear differently. Decisions carry more weight. Income begins to rise, not gradually, but structurally. You are no longer fighting the system. You are aligning with it. And alignment is power.